So get your power supplies ready. I think the Nvidia RTX 50 series is going to be some pretty power hungry GPUs. Starting at the top, the RTX 5090, there have been some reports that it may be pulling something like 600 watts. Now that's pretty much near the limit of that 16-pin connector, the cable. I really hope that Nvidia has done some improvements to that cable so that way, remember how many 4090s you would see on Reddit that sort of burnt up and had issues? I mean, maybe it was user error in some cases, maybe it wasn't. All that I know is I've seen it happen a lot, and I know people don't want to, destroy their 4090 because it's a very expensive GPU. So something certainly is wrong with whatever was going on with that connector. And remember, the 4090 is only about it's a 450 watt TDP, which is still pretty significant. I mean, that's a lot to put through a system. Now, a lot of people got a minimum of an 850 watt power supply. I mean, technically, in some mini ITX systems, I even ran a 750 watt power supply, the Corsair one, and obviously it worked fine, but that was a little bit too close to the limit. With a 4090, you probably want at least 850, and a lot of people will get probably 1,000 watt power supply. If you want to really do a little overkill, depending on your CPU, you may go for 1,200 watts or some of the crazy 15 or 600 watt power supplies as well. Now, if the new RTX 5090 is 600 watts, you can forget about 850 watts. You're going to want 1,000 watts plus at a minimum, and something that beefy if it really was, 600 watts. Now, maybe it might be 500 watts in terms of like the, just the baseline spec, a 50, watt bump from the 4090, and then like the third-party AIB GPUs may have unlocked power up to 600 watts. That would make a little bit more sense rather than just flat out starting it at 600 watts, which then it doesn't really have any wiggle room to go because that's kind of like the limit. I mean, who knows if they can have some type of like weird power standard where they can do multiple cables or something like that. But that's just, I think, completely unnecessary. And then it starts to go into like a data center type of GPU. If you have to have custom power solutions for it, it doesn't make sense as a gaming product. And now let's hear a word from our sponsor, VIP-CDKdeals.com, a Windows Pro CD key. Add to cart, you put in code CC20. This will also work on Windows 11. You want to go into your settings in Windows, change and adjust your CD key, click activate, and now let's go back to the video. But 500 watts as a baseline with the headroom to go to 600 watts, I could definitely see that happen. And probably 1,000 watt power supply is the absolute minimum. And then maybe 1,200 would really be the recommended, I would say. And then obviously you can, go a little more if you're going to have a very powerful CPU. Now, performance is going to be pretty significant. It's still going to be 12 gigabytes of VRAM. You're going to have the GDDR7, a VRAM in this, which is faster. It's more efficient. So that's going to be pretty big. 24 gigabytes is more than enough for gaming, even at high resolutions. And of course, they're saying this GPU may be something like 50 to 70% better than something like a 4090. It's believable because the 4090 was almost that much better in some cases than the 3090. And then you throw in all of the tensor cores and DLSS and ray tracing performance and specific hardware that may or may not be in an RTX 50 series that may target and improve certain things that the older GPUs didn't have, and then it could potentially be a very, very powerful, groundbreaking GPU. Maybe for more people, since this is going to be a very expensive GPU, I'm not sure if they're going to start it at $1,599 with the RTX 4090. That's what the MSRP for that GPU. More than likely, they're going to push up that price, and it's going to be a lot more expensive. Maybe $1,800, $1,999. We already see AIB GPUs for 4090s that high, but if the GPU is that powerful, they can move around that MSRP again for the 5090. That's the only GPU that doesn't seem to be as affected by sort of the downturn in the gaming market because, other consumers buy it, like content creators, 3D artists, machine learning. It can be used for AI in many cases. And that brings us to the 5080. The original 4080 and the 4080 Super, they have a pretty modest 320 watt TDP. That's not bad for the performance you're getting. 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Price aside, nobody liked the price of the 4080. 320 watts, pretty reasonable for that level of GPU. The 5080, I mean, they said all the way up to perhaps 400 watts, with like being 10% better than a 4090. That's possible. Possibly, like once again, it may be a 350 watt TDP. Maybe with the headroom, it can go up to 400 watts, 450 watts, like a 4090. Maybe, who knows what the baseline spec is going to be, but that would make more sense. And obviously, you get dangerously close to what a 4090 was in terms of power, so you have to worry about that connector again. 4080s didn't have nearly as many issues with the connectors, so that would be something that set it apart from last generation if they upgrade this connector, which you have to think they must have. I doubt they want any issues with this new GPU, so they probably have to do a new standard, or at least beef it up so you don't have the same issues as before. Nvidia has a lot of engineers, a lot of capable people, so I'm sure that they can figure it out. So it may actually be that the RTX 5080 is the more realistic high-end gaming GPU. It might be $999, like the 4080 Super. At least we would hope it wouldn't be any higher. Now, obviously the 5090 is the real top-end GPU, but at almost twice the price as the 80 series GPUs, it's not as realistic for the majority of buyers, and it may be difficult to get because of all the AI craze going around. It's not as bad as crypto, but that still exists as well. But even the 5080 is going to have higher power. Now, we don't know about the 5070. We can assume it might get a little bit of a bump in power. Maybe the performance will be close to like a 4080 or something like that. The 5070 and the 70 series GPUs, at least for the last few generations, have been more or less fairly efficient, fairly good GPUs for the power that they're sipping up. So we'll see what happens with those, and of course with the pricing and the eventual performance. But I think a 5080 that's 10% better than a 4090 and only does 350 to 400 watts, that's going to be a pretty interesting GPU, especially if it stays well under, or at least under, $1,000. All right, guys, so let me know what you think. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.